Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. The Federal Reserve now reviewing Silicone Valley Bank after the crash. Now reports that numerous federal agencies are investigating America's second largest bank failure.
The Federal Reserve announced on Monday that it's launching a review into the supervision and regulation of Silicone Valley Bank, or SVB. The statement reads, "We need to have humility and conduct a careful and thorough review of how we supervised and regulated this firm and what we should learn from this experience." A person familiar with the matter reportedly told the Washington Post that the Justice Department is investigating the issue as well. SVB in 2018 lobbied to change the rules for banks handling less than $250 billion. It argued that they shouldn't be considered systematically important. This freed them from capital requirements and other obligations. Former President Trump signed off on that bill.
Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements. I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again.
Biden added that he'll try to strengthen the rules for small banks. Senator Manchin on Tuesday said that he's partly open to that idea.
I'm open to making adjustments that'll still allow the small community and rural areas to still function without over-regulating to the standpoint where they can't participate or they go out of business. You can make an over-regulation to the point where they just can't function. And you got to be careful of that.
Meanwhile, shareholders are bringing a class action lawsuit against SVB's parent company, its CEO, and its chief financial officer. It alleges that some of SVB's financial reports didn't fully account for warnings from the Federal Reserve about interest rate hikes. The suit also claims that SVB failed to disclose that, if its investments were negatively affected by rising interest rates, it was particularly susceptible to a bank run. Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is blaming politics for the crash, saying SVB was so concerned with DEI and politics and all kinds of stuff. I think that really diverted from them focusing on their core mission. The government review of the crash is scheduled to be released on May 1st. Reporting by Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The latest on the GOP's investigation into the Biden family's money trail. The Treasury Department is now allowing the Republican-led Oversight Committee to review suspicious activity reports generated by the Biden family dealings with a Chinese energy company. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the details on the years-long probe.
More transparency could soon be coming regarding the Biden family's business transactions, specifically with regards to the president's son, Hunter Biden, and his brother, James Biden. Now, this is after Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer subpoenaed Bank of America, and 2 months after Comer requested more information from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen regarding the Biden family's suspicious business transactions that have been flagged by U.S. banks. The Treasury Department is now complying and will provide the committee with an in-camera review of suspicious activity reports related to what the GOP described as unusual foreign or high-dollar transactions. Now, this specifically is related to the Biden family's dealings with a now bankrupt Chinese energy company. This investigation has been a top priority for House Republicans since they took the majority. Chairman Comer wrote in a statement that bank documents that the committee already has reveals a $3 million wire from a Chinese energy company 2 months after Joe Biden left vice presidency, and that soon after, hundreds of thousands of dollars in payouts went to members of the Biden family. Chairman Comer revealing that there's another Biden family member in the mix, but wouldn't specify exactly who. Here's a look.
What we assumed was this was just about the president's son and 2 brothers, but now there's a new name that's emerged. So, and they are a Biden.
The president has denied any involvement in his son's overseas business dealings, and Democrat ranking member on the Oversight Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin, accused Chairman Comer of using his authority in hopes of attacking the president and boosting former President Trump's re-election efforts. And Chairman Comer pushes back, saying that he has not spoken with Trump about this investigation, arguing that it's purely about protecting national security. Now, Comer also recently subpoenaed a Treasury Secretary official requiring him to testify for an interview, although since the Treasury has now agreed to comply with the committee by providing them with these suspicious activity reports, that interview is now postponed. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
With more surveillance footage coming out, there's renewed attention given to the January 6th Capitol breach. To offer a unique take from an insider's perspective at the FBI, joining us next, we have former FBI agent Steve Friend. Steve Friend, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Steve, reports that the Treasury Department will release the Biden family's bank reports to the House Oversight Committee. What story do you think this may possibly tell?
I think it's telling more of a process story than it actually is going to be the end result. I think that it's showing that the House is actually following through on the promises that that the Republicans made during the 2022 election, that they would hold power to account and try to leave no stone unturned as far as any sort of corruption, and hopefully providing some transparency to the American people for everybody, because this is a nation of laws and everybody should be subject to those.
Steve, speaking of corruption, you're a former FBI agent. You blew the whistle. Can you kind of describe your experience working within the agency and any type of political bias that you may have experienced?
Absolutely. I spent close to 9 years in the FBI. Spent a good chunk of my time just keep my head down and working the cases in front of me. There are a lot of agents that sort of share that sentiment and just want to drive the mission forward. Unfortunately, there's a big disconnect between the rank and file and the management class. And as you climb that ladder, it's tending to become more and more political. And I think there's an argument to be made that the FBI has now just become a weaponized apparatchik of the presidential administration, and we've seen that bear out with prosecution of pro-life activists and failing to prosecute anybody who's protesting outside of a Supreme Court justice's house with the intent of influencing their decisions.
You know, it seems really difficult to be able to maintain that neutral, nonpartisan stance when you're a human being after all, and things have just been so politicized and hyper-partisan. How has the issue of political bias within the FBI impacted public trust, would you say?
I think it's been absolutely negative, and that bears itself out with the polling that's gone on. The approval now for the FBI is circling the drain. It's now under 50%, and unfortunately, when you have the director come forward and quote the number of applicants to be his metric for measuring success and approval of his agency, he's just not taking the temperature of the room. He does not think that the FBI clearly serves the American public. I think he probably views the FBI as being more of client service to the leaders in the administration.
I want to get your thoughts on January 6th. We've seen from the House Select Committee, their presentation. Now you're having House Speaker Kevin McCarthy releasing tape that people are able to analyze. Objectively, how do you view that day's events, and what questions might you still have?
I think any questions that I have, I probably shared by most of America. The only solution to that is just going to be radical transparency. That is the people's house. I'm hoping that this slow drip of surveillance footage is just eventually abandoned, and we just get the whole amount of it. There's no reason why it should be leaked out slowly, because that just gives cannon fodder to both sides to accuse the other of cherry picking their information. Well, it's a great way to put everything into context, and that's to have the complete context. As far as perspective on that whole day, I think that there is a mixed bag. I think there's absolutely people who were out of control and did some deplorable and abhorrent actions, and they need to be held accountable. And then I think there were others and folks that I actually had the opportunity to investigate who just simply exercised their First Amendment right to assemble and to protest, and then asked for permission to enter the people's house and were given it by the Capitol Police. And whether or not the Capitol Police were trying to de-escalate the situation doesn't mitigate the fact that they gave permission to those folks and assured them that they were within the law to walk through the Capitol peacefully and admire the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Lastly, Steve, before we let you go, I just want to get your thoughts on this. What advice would you give to one of those rank and file FBI agents who's experiencing this political bias within the workplace, yet their livelihood, their family, their career is on the line, and they just don't know what to do. What would you say to them?
I think that the answer isn't easy, but it is simple. You swear an oath in the very beginning, and that has to mean something at the end of the day. I stood up and I swore an oath before God, my family, and my colleagues that I was going to protect the Constitution and my fellow countrymen. And I joined the FBI to do the work at the FBI, not to retire from the FBI. And I know it's a bum deal, it's a bum rap for you if you have that sort of ambition to do your 20 and then collect your pension, but that's not a guarantee. You took that oath. You're supposed to serve the public, and if that means having to put it on the line, I would encourage you to do so. But you can also do it properly and do it smartly. You should look into the proper whistleblowing procedures and make sure your concerns brought forward. And hopefully, this select committee looking at government weaponization will protect whistleblowers so that you're not going to have to sacrifice that career.
Steve Friend, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.
President Biden announcing new gun control measures today while visiting California. The White House calling the order the most comprehensive policy Biden can enact without Congress. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
President Biden on Tuesday traveled to Monterey Park, California, where 11 people died during a shooting in January. And Biden signed an executive order aimed at expanding gun control.
This executive order helps keep firearms out of dangerous hands. As I continue to call on Congress to require background checks for all firearm sales.
Biden's latest order seeks to reinforce background checks for gun purchases by ensuring dealers follow existing laws. And the White House says the order's goal is to implement almost universal background checks without additional legislation by Congress. But the order is sparking some opposition. A spokesman for the nonprofit Gun Owners of America tells me that he believes the order will impact law-abiding citizens.
Executive order literally wants to redefine what constitutes as engaging in business, basically meaning that anyone, even myself, if I was to personally sell a firearm from my collection, I would now be engaging in business and would have to get a federal firearms license.
And Biden again calls for banning what he calls assault weapons.
Ban assault weapons. Ban them again. Do it now. Enough. Do something. Do something big.
Such measures are unlikely to pass in Congress, especially with Republicans controlling the House and Democrats holding a narrow majority in the Senate. Republican Congresswoman Mary Miller on Tuesday called Biden's latest executive order an attack on Second Amendment rights, adding that it's the catch and release program that's contributing to what she calls a crime crisis. And Gun Owners of America echoes that point.
The Biden administration is claiming that it's firearms that are committing crimes. It's not. It's criminals that are committing crimes.
Meanwhile, President Biden continues to call on Congress to act. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao at TD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.